Buffalo Head Solos, the Mighty Tim Seibles. Welcome home, an end of the Millennium Tale, after Stephen Dobbins. A terrible keening, a collective snarl arose from the cities and plantations of the world, and white people, weary of protests and searing rebuke, simply vanished to the moon. They were still itchy for conquest, but their burden had become immense. They felt underappreciated, even flatly despised. Sociology dogged their steps. History betrayed them. A little rape here, a little genocide there. At first, everybody tried to act normal. What's up, bruh? Es todo ese. But without the wide awning of whiteness, the sky reopened like a Nigerian bazaar. And people began to dawdle before mirrors, to lollygag around store windows. Inexplicably, their complexions seemed lighter. The global blizzard under which whole villages had been buried, whole civilizations lost, was finally over. And marigolds blazed all over the dark citizen rainbow. The huge white hand that had been day and night squeezing their heads was gone, and everybody turned off their TVs. Why watch police shows? Why dilly-dally around with self-hatred and dumb distraction? Gang members plunked down their automatics and started glee clubs. Ministers admitted they knew nothing about God and began to breastfeed in public to prove they were starting over. Everywhere, bars closed down. Drug dealers slashed prices, but finally had to think in terms of tofu. For without whites and the triple psychosis of color gives privilege gives power, everyone started untying their shoes. No more Tums, no more Tylenol, no more mashing two faces into one. Those who had spent their lives trying to be white whapped each other with blobs of pizza dough and started 12-step recoveries. Each meeting started with a chorus of, I like this old skin of mine, and I'm gonna let it shine. After 9 months, the black separatists reacted. They held rallies, displayed white mannequins in hostile poses, passed out Remember Rodney King billy clubs. They took our government, sharing control with the Latin Asian Assembly. A new draft was begun to induct those who would pretend to be members of the Ku Klux Klan. Unlucky people forced to wear pointy hoods and shout, America for Americans, and I sure as hell hate me some melon-eating porch monkeys. Eventually, the Nation of Islam seized power and, with AIM soldiers as allies, ran around sloshing non-believers with white paint. You're one filthy Caucasoid, they'd sneer, tugging their bow ties. Quit messing up our duds, people smiled. The world is a symphony. Our lives are the music. We shan't again be what we were. For without white supremacy and its soul-eating whispers, the old rage that had simmered everywhere like crocodile soup was covered with foil and stuffed in the fridge. The shop till you drop frenzy, intended to distract people from the cruel parade, quickly sputtered. Why fill your apartment with anything but gladness? Why chew on the past? A rash of polycultural love fest swept the globe. Ugandans orgifying with Filipinos while the Apache covered their Eskimo cousins with butterfly kisses. In the third year of ease, with the help of Colin Powell and a few other Republicans of color, a coalition of corporate types seeped into office. Donning Armani suits, they shuttled to the moon where the whites were sitting around, listless, blending into the pale landscape. With time on their hands like a stain, and no egg foo young, and no one to teach them how to rap, the majority grew somber. Perhaps we went too far, they nodded. That stuff with the Indians, those bombs on Japan. We did get a little crazy with the slavery thing. Their children scowled. What on earth were you thinking? It's no fun on the moon. The Rainbow Business Coalition asked around until the leader, Bob Robertson, an international televangelist, waved his hand. He'd made his fortune dealing Krugerrands and sat fondling a crucifix. We just happened to be in the area, the RBC said. Figured you might need a change of scenery. Maybe some tacos? Bob breathed hotly, buffed the cross on his vest. They felt awkward. Juan Valdez hummed a little blues. It sure be nice, Colin shuffled, to have hockey again. Over the moon's west edge, their planet, crowned in sunlight, crested like a whale. Affirmative action, a schmurmative action, Justice Tommy added. After all, what else are bootstraps for? Hallelujah, Bob sang. Let me powwow with others. Back on Earth, the RBC argued and begged, invoked Buddha and Jesus, infiltrated the Baha'is, sent their faithful door to door. Imagine being white, they sighed, and nobody wants you around, just because of that. Hallelujah, friend, prejudice is pus in the heart. After a year's debate, a kind of probation was set up. Jobs would be created or workfare required for those of lunar descent. No more teams named Indians, etc. No more Pat Boone covering Little Richard, etc. A snowy day in July would be set aside for the celebration of white history. This is how they returned. First, the weather was adjusted, cooled. Madonna, Elvis, Frank Sinatra, and the Stones were smuggled back into music stores. VO5 and Cosmopolitan glimmered on the racks. Billboards offering one well-dressed, red-haired, smiling Caucasian sprang up. Then, the public service announcements. When you see someone white, do not be alarmed. This is only a test. Think diversity. The preparations went on and on until, after the 7th solstice, people began to suspect the whole thing had been a hoax, that maybe whiteness was a myth, that maybe whiteness itself was a myth. It was hard to recall what it was like with them in the world. Maybe it hadn't been so bad. Maybe they were too terrible to be clearly remembered. Then came a shining in the air, a soft switch in the wind, a stillness as though before a sneeze, and whites began to fall from the sky in a spotty drizzle. At first, a Girl Scout, 2 skiers, then a steady shower, and soon it was pouring white people. Whole suburbs and villages, whole nations, the heavens, like a celestial Europe, opened up. And as the new light flickered on the Dutch, the Spaniards, the brown-haired Slavs, the bright-eyed Brits, and finally on the complicated faces of those who'd become American, the inhabitants of Earth cried out, lifted their arms to catch the strange, familiar body